Originating in the heart of the Delta Quadrant, the Borg Collective were a race of cybernetic humanoids whose individuality had been replaced with a collective consciousness, working to achieve their goal of perfection. As they spread throughout the galaxy, they worked towards this goal by assimilating distinct life forms and technologies, conquering thousands of worlds, and using the knowledge gained to enhance the collective. The exact origins of the Borg are unknown, with even Borg memories of their beginnings fractured and incomplete. Many believe their history traces back thousands of centuries, when they may have once been a more typical humanoid race, whose great advances in cybernetics led them to evolve and transform their society into the collective, while others have comprised alternative theories, with some suggesting that the Voyager 6 space probe launched by Earth, later known as Vidger, traveled through a spatial anomaly, sending it across the galaxy and landing on a planet inhabited by living machines who rebuilt and upgraded the probe, then sending it back into space with the ability to continue learning until eventually reaching sentience. This interaction then led to the next level of Borg evolution, creating the collective of later centuries. And while some claim the timeline does not match because Voyager 6 was launched in the 20th century, at which point the Borg were already expanding and conquering territory, the proponents of the Vidger theory claim the probe may have not only been sent across the galaxy, but back in time, arriving on the Borg homeworld in the early days of their development. Another theory states that even the timeline of Borg evolution is in question, with some claiming that it is only their organic and artificial components that have been developing for thousands of centuries, and that the aggressive, expansionist collective of the modern era has only existed as a spacefaring civilization for about 1,000 years, a rough estimation gathered by tracking the numbers they assign to assimilated species, and through the testimony of the Vaudois who claimed the Borg had only conquered a handful of systems by the 15th century, possibly suggesting they had only recently began expanding. And while their beginnings remain shrouded in mystery, at some point in their development, a Borg queen emerged, a single unifying voice bringing order to chaos, able to speak and act as an individual while remaining a part of the collective. Originating in the Delta Quadrant, they began assimilating and conquering neighboring worlds so that by the 24th century, the Borg had taken an enormous section of space, destroying or assimilating all major powers until no rivals remained in the area. They had even expanded beyond the Delta Quadrant, conquering worlds in both the Beta and Alpha quadrants. Though most in the Federation were not truly made aware of the Borg threat until 2365, already by the 2350s, rumors existed about a race of technologically advanced conquerors from the far side of the galaxy. Encounters with refugees such as Guinan and others of the El-Audian system spoke of these terrible creatures who so mercilessly conquered their homeworlds. Though most did not give these rumors any serious consideration, a pair of exobiologists named Magnus and Aaron Hansen left their old lives behind, taking their daughter Annika with them on a deep space mission to discover the truth. They eventually found the mysterious species and followed them through a transwarp hub all the way to the Delta Quadrant, observing and documenting everything they could. Unfortunately, the Hansen family was eventually discovered and assimilated by the Borg in 2356. Annika, the young daughter of the exobiologists, would be placed in a maturation chamber until coming to maturity, when she was given the designation 7 of 9, tertiary adjunct of Unimatrix 01. Individual Borg drones often came from very different backgrounds, yet after assimilation became much more uniform, with their skin turning gray and the loss of all body hair. After a being is captured, they are injected with nanoprobes, microscopic machines which change the physiology of its host, often growing cybernetic implants within the body. External cybernetics are also added to the drone, often surgically implanted. Many drones have at least one biological arm and eye amputated and replaced with enhanced technological prosthetics. Tactical drones also have weapons installed, while medical drones are given medical tools and diagnostic equipment. All drones are equipped with a neural transceiver that keeps them in communication with the hive mind, a cortical processor for the rapid assimilation of information, and a neural processor which keeps a record of communication with the collective. In addition, each drone is implanted with assimilation tubes to inject nanoprobes into future victims. With so many cybernetic implants, individual drones are made incredibly strong and resilient, able to live for extended periods without food, water, shelter, or air, even able to survive in the vacuum of space. All they require is time in a regeneration unit, which powers their artificial components. When injured, drones are assessed and repaired if possible, but when damage is too great, they are disassembled and their parts reused for other drones, while their memories remain in the collective consciousness. There is also a built-in failsafe, allowing drones, ships, and sensitive technology to automatically vaporize or destroy itself before it can fall into enemy hands. Borg vessels, which are often shaped as geometric cubes and spheres, have no living quarters or social comforts, with every inch of their vessel given a practical purpose, and all drones working constantly, only pausing to regenerate. In addition to warp speed, Borg ships contain transwarp coils, allowing them to fly well beyond warp limitations. Their ships are also outfitted with maturation chambers, designed to store any children assimilated by the Borg, increasing their rate of growth until physically matured and able to join the collective. In 2365, after years of rumor, the United Federation of Planets finally began to comprehend the truth of the Borg threat when Captain Jean-Luc Picard and the USS Enterprise D encountered Q, a former member of the Q Continuum, seemingly all-powerful beings who observe the universe and sometimes manipulate events as they see fit. This particular Q developed an antagonistic history with Captain Picard and wanted the captain to admit his vulnerabilities and ask for Q's help. With Picard proving uncooperative, Q transported their vessel 7,000 light-years to see a mysterious cube-shaped ship. Though it was far from Federation borders, Q named the species Borg and said that this vessel and their kind were a relentless and merciless species with the power to destroy everything the Federation had built, and that the further they traveled into deep space, the closer they would come to encountering the threat. In fact, the Borg had already visited the Alpha Quadrant, responsible for the disappearance of the USS Tombaugh in 2362 and the destruction of several Federation outposts along the Romulan neutral zone in 2364. Yet at the time, those attacks had gone without explanation, most unaware the Borg had already started their raids into the Beta and Alpha Quadrants. Though Captain Picard and the Enterprise D survived the encounter thanks to Q, it would only be 1 year later that the Borg vessel headed towards Earth would finally engage the Enterprise, capturing and assimilating Captain Jean-Luc Picard. The Borg collective used the captain's knowledge of Federation technology and tactics as an advantage in battle, while also giving the Picard drone a unique designation as Locutus of Borg, so he might act as a representative of the collective, hoping that by speaking to an individual, the Federation might offer less resistance. It did not. In the year 2367, an armada of 40 Federation starships led by Admiral J.P. Hansen engaged the Borg cube at the Battle of Wolf 359. The Borg proved unlike anything they had ever faced, resulting in the greatest loss in Federation history. 39 of 40 vessels were destroyed, with thousands assimilated or killed. The cube, however, was practically undamaged and continued on towards Earth. Eventually, the threat was eliminated when Locutus of Borg was recaptured by the crew of the Enterprise, using his abilities to communicate with the cube, ordering the ship's destruction before it could assimilate Earth. Captain Picard was able to return to his human state, and while the Federation survived, they lost a great deal, knowing it would be years before they fully recovered. And while the Borg threat abated for a time, they would return again 6 years later. This time, the Federation was better prepared, and though they suffered heavy casualties at the Battle of Sector 001, they were able to destroy the Borg cube as it neared Earth. Yet as the cube exploded, a smaller spherical Borg craft escaped from within the larger vessel. The Enterprise E chased the smaller vessel, hoping to reach it before it could attack Earth. But rather than attack, the Borg sphere disappeared, traveling through time to the year 2063, with the Enterprise crew still following. Their plan was to prevent first contact between the Vulcans and humans, thereby eliminating the threat of the Federation before it could begin. But the Enterprise crew was able to destroy the Borg sphere and played their part in ensuring that first contact occurred. Eventually, the crew was able to duplicate the temporal vortex that brought them to the 21st century and returned to their own time. This temporal encounter with the Borg would then have further ramifications, as some of the debris from the Borg sphere landed on Earth, buried in the snows of the Arctic Circle. In the year 2153, this wreckage would be discovered along with still functional Borg drones. The Borg were able to assimilate members of the research team and steal a ship in an attempt to return to the Delta Quadrant, but Captain Jonathan Archer and the crew of the Enterprise NX-01 were able to destroy the vessel and prevent their escape. Yet before dying, they sent a signal to Borg space, which would take 200 years to arrive at its destination, but would point the way towards Earth and possibly be the catalyst that brought the Borg to the Alpha Quadrant in the first place. This also implies that when Q transported Picard and his ship to meet the Borg for the first time, he did it not only as a game for his own amusement, but also as a warning to give humanity time to prepare for the threat approaching. In 2368, the crew of the Enterprise discovered an injured but still functional drone and brought it aboard, with Picard hoping to place a virus within its system and send it back into the collective. But after recovering from his injuries and spending time with the crew, no longer connected to the hive mind, Q, as he became known, started to act as an individual, even convincing Captain Picard that his life was to be respected and could not be used as a weapon of mass destruction. And while they offered him asylum, Q had grown to care for the crew of the ship and knew that the Borg would not stop searching for him, and so gave himself up to protect the Enterprise. Yet when he rejoined the collective, his memories of individuality and time with the Federation vessel spread to other drones, causing the Borg cube to descend into disarray, their shared mind now disrupted, no longer able to function. The collective then cut off Hugh's ship from the rest of the hive mind, leaving it to be discovered by Data's android brother, Lore, who took advantage of their state, acting as their new leader and bringing order to the chaos. However, the newfound individuality of the drones caused some to follow Hugh in rebellion against this selfish and untrustworthy leadership. Despite the devastation the Borg were able to unleash upon their enemies, they proved unable to launch a full-scale assault on the Alpha Quadrant, largely due to a series of catastrophes within the Borg collective throughout the 2370s. Though they continued to engage in occasional battles with the Federation, most notably the crew of the USS Voyager, who was stranded in the Delta Quadrant trying to make it back to Earth. In the late 24th century, the most fearsome enemy of the Borg became Species 8472, an insectoid race from a dimension known as fluidic space. The Borg initially began the war with an incursion into their territory, yet quickly proved outmatched and lost thousands of worlds and systems to the enemy race. The Borg were eventually forced into a temporary alliance with Captain Janeway and the Voyager crew after it was discovered that they had developed technology to combat Species 8472. With the aid of Voyager, the collective proved victorious against their enemies, but suffered greatly. In 2377, 7 of 9 learned of a mutation that allowed her to visit an artificial oasis known as Unimatrix Zero, where regenerating Borg drones were able to regain their individuality, living lives of peace and prosperity in a shared dreamlike state. Although no longer a drone, she was contacted by others still within the collective, whom she had known in this alternate reality, when the hive mind learned of this glitch in the system, sending drones to assimilate the individuals in the oasis and destroy the dangerous fantasy permanently. But with the help of the Voyager crew, 7 of 9 was able to liberate the drones from Unimatrix Zero, allowing them to keep their individual personalities even as they awoke from regeneration, causing them to rebel against the collective, taking over ships and fighting their oppressors. An even more devastating loss came in the year 2378, when once again they encountered the Voyager spacecraft, capturing and assimilating Admiral Janeway, who had traveled back in time to aid the Voyager crew by giving them the technology to reach the Alpha Quadrant quickly. Though the plan underwent several changes, the Voyager ship eventually was able to use a Borg transwarp conduit to make their way back to Earth, while simultaneously sacrificing Admiral Janeway, who was purposely captured so that she might spread a virus within the collective, disrupting the connection between individual drones and the hive mind. The ensuing chaos allowed for the Voyager crew to destroy the transwarp conduit, crippling the Borg's ability to travel quickly throughout the galaxy. When the Borg were last seen, the Janeway pathogen had killed the Queen, and the remains of the Borg collective were now scattered, chaotic, and without communication, leadership, or direction. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Sir Sean the Gallant, Glegnus, son of Vorin, Drakthul, Alethis Allheart of the Pureborn, Lady of the Jade Gates, and the Smiling Cow. You all make these videos possible, and I am eternally grateful for your support. If you would like to help CivilizationEx and gain early access to videos, access to the Patreon-only series Heroes of Lore and Legend, and vote on future content to be produced, you can click on the Patreon link in the description box below and pledge any amount you'd like on a monthly basis. Or if you'd prefer to make a single donation, you can use the PayPal link also in the description below. And please be sure to like and subscribe and click on the links to see more.